Hey guys, tonight we drift through a history scented with danger, elegance, and whispers. You step softly through corridors flickering with oil lamps, where every breeze carries secrets, jasmine, clove, a whiff of vetiver sharpened by intrigue. You're not here as a guest exactly. You're here as a witness invisible, trailing the powdered edges of a story few people ever sniffed out fully. It's Madagascar sometime in the 19th century, but it could also be a dream if dreams had queen spies and perfumes potent enough to alter treaties. The floor beneath you is smooth wood, polished by years of royal feet and careful brushing with coconut oil and lemon leaves. A servant passes by, barely a rustle of movement, but your nose catches it vanilla, smoky and rich, with just the tiniest acidic edge of calamansi. That scent isn't an accident. Nothing in this palace ever is. You think perfume is just for romance? No. In this world, perfume is policy. It's strategy. It's war by other means. And trust me, you probably wouldn't survive the first round of royal bathing rituals, let alone the political minefields of choosing the wrong floral blend. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is there. I love seeing the global bedtime club. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You pause by a carved wooden screen peeking through the slats. The queen is arriving. Her silhouette appears like a story forming out of mist. One hand lifts a trailing piece of embroidered silk. Her other hand holds a sachet woven linen. Nothing fancy yet, from here you feel it already. Neroli, crushed orchid, a haunting base of aged sandalwood. You don't know it yet, but this exact blend will bring a governor to his knees in 3 days' time. Behind her, 3 women in layers of red and gold follow like flames at her heels. They carry fans, hairpins, a box of rolled herbs. They carry power. One of them raises the box slightly, just enough to let you glimpse a sliver of blue glass vial after vial of fragrant oils lined up like chess pieces. Lavender to calm patchouli, to agitate clove oil if she needs to cut through a lie. Historians still argue whether Queen Ranavalona I ever actually poisoned a rival with perfume, or whether it was the rival's guilt that made her sweat to death in the heat. She stops at the threshold of the room. A servant lays a sprig of marjoram and burnt orange peel beneath her heel. It's not for scent this time. It's a coded message the chief minister is nearby, and he smells like panic. You glide into the corner unnoticed as the queen takes her seat. She does not speak. She doesn't have to. The incense speaks for her rosemary and tamarind today, which in the palace lexicon means I already know your answer, and you should be ashamed. The courtiers nod solemnly. One man shifts uncomfortably in his sarong. His forehead gleams with perspiration, and your nose wrinkles. He reeks of uncertainty and badly diluted rosewater. Out in the garden, the night blooms open tuberose and moonflower, sending their scents upward like offerings. Somewhere in the distance, a zebu bell tinkles. In the opposite direction, a chorus of frogs begins their diplomatic croaking. And yet here in this moment, all your senses hone in on the single drop of perfume glistening at the queen's neck. One drop and an entire nation leans forward. Perfume has always meant more here. Long before Chanel, long before Cleopatra, long before some European colonizers shoved flower oils into tiny glass bottles and called it innovation. In Madagascar, perfume was woven into ceremony, into spirituality, into inheritance law. Tonight it's woven into political theater. The queen reaches for her sachet again. You hold your breath, a whisper of lemongrass. Someone is about to be exiled. You linger in the warm hush of the court, where the scent of lemongrass still curls like a question around the queen's seat. Nobody moves. Not yet. You're learning something unspoken in this room. It's not words that start wars. It smells. Outside, the breeze shifts. Somewhere, wood smoke coils into the air, mingled with burnt palm bark, a signal perhaps. Or maybe just dinner being prepared with great nervousness. You follow the queen as she rises, every step measured, every motion deliberate, as though the very dust is watching her. She walks past lacquered panels engraved with ancestral spirits, their eyes forever open. These spirits too know what you're learning. Scent isn't an accessory, it's a language. And tonight you're hearing it for the first time. Ranavalona, but I was not the first woman to rule here. But she was the first to wield perfume like a blade in daylight. To understand that fragrance wasn't just divine, it was persuasive. Generations before her had passed down blends like royal edicts recipes, inked not on scrolls but onto skin and memory. And now you are stepping into that memory. Before Ranavalona, there was Queen Ranavalona I. She ruled in the 16th century, give or take. Historians still argue whether her rise was through lineage or sheer charisma. But one thing's agreed on: she soaked herself daily in the river scented with wild ginger and lemongrass. And when she emerged, people claimed the wind shifted direction to follow her. You see her now seated on woven reeds, anointing her feet with ylang-ylang petals. It's not perfume in a bottle, it's scent as ceremony. Before she gives a ruling, she burns myrrh and drapes herself in leaves of ravensara in a native camphor tree. Her enemies sneeze just being near her. Her allies feel steadied like a fever broken. And so perfume became precedent. You trail her shadow through time, watching as scent rituals evolve. The island's healers, Ambiasi, begin codifying blends not only to cure headaches, but to bend loyalty. A husband growing cold, bathe him in citrus and honey. A warrior too eager, smoke him with resin and pepper leaf. A priest doubting the gods, burn dried vetiver under his pillow. At first you think it's superstition, but then you notice something. Everyone listens more carefully after the air is sweetened. You step into a smaller chamber, now intimate, humid, lined with alabaster jars. This is where queens learn to mix oils, not just wear them. A hand reaches in, selecting clove buds with practiced precision. Each jar holds more than liquid. It holds leverage. Even as traders arrive from Arabia, India, and later Europe, perfume remains local. Foreigners bring silk beads, mirrors. The queens accept them politely. But the sandalwood that stays in-house, only Malagasy hands gather it. Only royal noses approve it. You crouch beside a young girl, perhaps 8, carefully grinding dried orchids with rock salt. Her mentor nods approvingly. This child is no servant. She is a niece of the queen, being trained in statecraft through scent. She's told know how to make someone remember you. Know how to make them regret forgetting you. Later you walk through the queen's sleeping quarters. The pillows are stuffed with dried frangipani. The mattress is dusted with crushed mint. Before sleep, she inhales a blend of rose clove and a whisper of eucalyptus, just enough to keep dreams sharp. Perfume in this world is inheritance. When a queen dies, her scent, her specific combination of oils, is not reused. It's sealed like a vault. To reuse it would be an insult, unless of course you're making a point. And oh, Ranavalona loved a good point. She once entered a council wearing her grandmother's exact blend. The air froze. Everyone knew what it meant. I remember what she did. I can do it too. Still today, some elders in the highlands say that when the wind carries a certain sweetness, rosewood citrus ashes, it's her spirit moving again. You step outside the palace and the night hits you different, heavier. The air is no longer just air, it's an archive. There's history in this breeze. Petty rivalries and power moves, crushed petals and silent assassinations. You inhale slowly. There it is again, lemongrass. And just like that, someone's fate is sealed. You wake, or maybe you never quite slept, inside a new morning, wrapped in the fragrance of something faint and deliberate. Not floral, not herbal, spiced, ground nutmeg maybe, a touch of warming cinnamon. But these are not kitchen scents. Not here. You follow the aroma like a thread through a labyrinth, padding across cool floor tiles toward the royal quarters. The sun is just brushing the edges of the lattice windows, but Queen Ranavalona I is already awake. Of course she is. You don't rule an island with softness, nor sleep in. She sits upright in her canopied bed, motionless but fully alert. A servant kneels by her side with a basin of steaming water. Inside float crushed hibiscus flowers and torn vetiver roots. The steam rises slowly, carrying notes of soil, of rain, of memory. You watch as she breathes it in, eyes still closed, committing names, debts, and betrayals to scent. She begins her morning routine not with a crown or counsel, but with perfume. A handmaid rubs her shoulders with coconut oil infused with vanilla bean. Another dusts her collarbone with a mix of clove powder and pulverized star anise. Ranavalona lifts her chin slightly, and a third servant places a dab of musk extracted painstakingly from the civet cat at the base of her throat. This isn't self-care. It's not even presentation. It's calibration. By the time she steps into the open-air throne room, the queen smells like empire. You follow at a respectful distance. The courtiers have gathered. Their robes are bright, their eyes even brighter. Everyone is watching for clues, but not in her words, in her smell. One lord murmurs, "She's wearing the morning blend." Another flinches. "No," he whispers. There's cardamom in it today. You can feel the air grow tenser. Cardamom in this context is not an accident. It's a signal that someone will be grilled politely, of course, and in public. Historians still argue whether Ranavalona had formal training in espionage, but what's certain is she weaponized perception. Even the slightest change in her scent, too much neroli, too little basil, was enough to make the court tremble. And then there's the oil of Voamadilo, Madagascar's own nutmeg. Used sparingly, it stuns the senses. Used generously, it disturbs dreams. She wears it on her wrist today. A nobleman stares too long, and you can almost see the room spin around him. But here's the oddity. Despite her ruthlessness, the queen rarely spoke above a murmur. She didn't need to. Her perfume did the work, whispered intent, suggested menace, promised delight or disaster. One record written shakily by a French missionary claims she once dismissed an entire trade delegation for arriving reeking of tobacco and sweat. If you cannot clean your bodies, she supposedly said, you cannot clean your deals. You watch her pass through her garden where sacred plants line every path like silent guards. A breeze carries over a waft of crushed lemongrass and basil, disturbed by her hemline. The scent is already shifting again. She pauses beneath a breadfruit tree, placing one drop of ylang-ylang oil on her pulse point. She's preparing. This is her armor. There is a man waiting at the far end of the courtyard, a governor, nervous hands trembling. You know instantly this will not go well for him. He bows too deeply. She doesn't offer her hand. She says nothing. But the wind favors her side today, and the governor cannot help but inhale the floral sweet sharp blend. She now wears the confrontation blend as it's whispered behind fans. Gardenia, orange peel, and yes, cardamom. You're close enough now to see his throat twitch. The scent speaks volumes. She finally addresses him calm as a shaded lake, and somehow her voice smells like the garden. The queen's perfume has done the preamble, the argument, and the verdict. He just doesn't know it yet. You linger at the garden's edge as the queen disappears into the interior halls, but her scent doesn't fade. It lingers in the air in your clothes behind your teeth. Gardenia, orange peel, cardamom. It smells like a decision that cannot be undone. You follow a narrower path now, hedged by dense bundles of ravinsera, their sharp minty leaves brushing your arms. At the end of the path is a wooden door, unmarked but unmistakable. This is where plans are made, the small, hot room where the queen meets her inner circle. Not for declarations, no, for scheming. Inside, the air hangs heavy with sandalwood smoke. A pot of burning resin gives off coils of scent that bend like serpents. And near the center sits a wide stone dish filled with a paste the color of amber. You recognize it instantly, a royal blend, thick with clove oil, vetiver, crushed rose petals, and of course just a trace of ginger. This isn't bath oil, it's war paint. Ranavalona stands over it, dipping her fingers in slowly as if touching the past. Then she begins applying it along her arms, down the inside of her wrists, and finally across her shoulders. Each stroke precise. You notice the room grows quieter with every motion. Even her advisors, hardened generals, land ministers, temple officials don't speak. They just breathe in. Perfume here is permission. And when she finishes applying it, they know now you may talk. The conversation flows in hushed tones, punctuated by the clink of an oil vial or the grind of a new herb. One man proposes a new tax. Another suggests arresting a merchant rumored to be working with French interests. But Ranavalona says little. She simply nods or doesn't. You begin to see a pattern. When she approves, she lifts her wrist to her temple. The scent rises. Conversation flows. When she disapproves, she remains still. Her scent remains sealed. Historians still debate whether she used scent deliberately in this manner, or if it was the court that learned to read her so closely, it became a reflex. But you can tell she knows exactly what she's doing. And it's not only politics. Later that day, you trail her into a smaller chamber, the kind of space designed for private visitors. A lover, perhaps, a spy, maybe both. The walls are draped in woven mats soaked in aromatic oils, turmeric, cassia bark, Madagascar vanilla. A low table holds a bowl of fresh citrus peels, half sunk in honey. She sits, not on a throne this time, but on a cushion of braided banana fiber. He arrives, tall, nervous, hands stained with ink. He bows. She gestures faintly to the space beside her. He obeys. There's silence. Then a soft pop as a small stopper is removed. She dabs something just once onto his collarbone. The scent is unmistakable, labdanum and galbanum, heavy, earthy, and deeply binding. In Madagascar's courtly language of scent, that blend means loyalty or else. He swallows, says he understands, And for a second, the queen smiles. But then she leans in. So close that even you, invisible as you are, feel your heart skip. And she whispers one word. You can't hear it. But the air changes. He bows again. Deeper this time. When he leaves, you can smell it clinging to him, a new scent. Something she applied after he arrived. Frankincense with a pinch of sea salt. You recognize it from an earlier chapter in the court's scent book. It means watched. That night, no one knows where the queen is. Rumors flicker. Some say she wandered the garden alone. Others say she sat in her grandmother's old chamber, sifting through relics. You find her back in the stone paste room. She's alone, reaching for a new jar. She uncorks it, and you are hit by something ferocious, black pepper myrrh, and the sharp citrus of Kambava lime. It singes your memory. She smiles to herself. Tomorrow someone will be accused of treason, but tonight she just smells like certainty. The scent of certainty seeps into your sleep if this drifting twilight state even counts as rest. You're following her again before your eyes fully open, or maybe they never closed. Time stretches oddly here like resin warmed by the sun. And in this place, in this story, it's not sunrise or sunset that sets the pace. It's scent. You find yourself at the outer edge of the palace where the breeze carries in aromas, not cultivated but accidental. Cook fires from the workers' quarters, chickens, iron, dust. But even here, perfume finds a way in. A boy rushes past you barefoot, holding a jar that clinks like a coin pouch. You catch it barely as he turns a corner, lemongrass and betrayal. The boy disappears behind a curtain, and you step closer, inhaling slowly. Inside, 2 court attendants crouch over a small brass burner. One drips oil into the flames. The other stirs a bowl of thick paste with a stick carved from ebony. They're not perfumers, not officially, but they work under the Queen's direct command, and what they mix is not for pleasure. You hear them speaking in low tones. This one's for the envoy, the older whispers. He says he's loyal, but his hair smells of Marseille soap. Imported, the other says. A pause. That means letters, hidden in linens. Maybe maps. You watch as they add powdered ginger and a scrap of cassia bark. The mixture fizzes, releasing a scent that makes your nose tingle and your curiosity deepen. In Ranavalona court, even evidence has a smell. You leave them to their brewing and drift toward the center garden again, where the queen herself waits beneath the shade of a traveling fig. Today she is barefoot, a rare moment of softness, if not vulnerability. She crushes a basil leaf between her fingers and rubs it against her temple. You watch puzzled. This is not a political move. This is something else. Then you notice the third figure nearby, a girl, not yet a teenager, copying every move with perfect precision. This is a lesson. The queen says nothing, but the oils are lined up in small dishes around them, like vocabulary flashcards. One is clove-infused coconut. Another is citrus balm. A third glows faintly blue like a storm in a bowl. The girl reaches for that last one. The queen slaps her hand away. A soft correction. No words. Then she guides the child's fingers toward a neutral blend, sweet orange and vetiver. Not yet war. Historians still argue whether this child was Ranavalona's niece or daughter, or a chosen heir. Some say she vanished before reaching adulthood. Others believe she became the queen's scent archivist, a role so powerful it needed no crown. What's clear is that perfume wasn't just used, it was taught, and just as importantly, it was withheld. You glide with them as they rise and retreat into the perfumery chambers. The queen selects 3 oils from the wall. She does not label them. She simply hands them to the girl in a woven pouch and says, "Use them when they lie. You'll know which." No further instructions. You stand still in the heavy silence after they leave, taking in the smell of that blue oil again. Rainforest sap, charcoal. Something cold and old, like stone memory. You back out slowly. Later that afternoon, you watch a new arrival to the court, a foreign merchant in fine silks with 2 shiny teeth and a cologne that chokes the jasmine vines. He bows, he smiles, he offers gifts. But you can already tell this will not end well. Ranavalona doesn't scold him. She doesn't scowl. She simply fans herself. The fan is lined with a thick balm. You see the sheen. When she waves it, the scent rolls toward him like a tide. You smell it before he does. It's the storm blend. His face freezes. In the silence that follows, you hear one of the palace cats sneeze. Later, the merchant will be escorted out. He won't know why, but you do. The queen didn't need to accuse him. She let her perfume do the prosecution. You wake or perhaps sink deeper into a moment of soft clove smoke. The palace is quieter today, the kind of hush that feels intentional, like a room holding its breath. Something is brewing, and not just in the copper pots of the perfumers. You step onto the upper balcony above the courtyard, where the breeze feels cooler and more detached. From this height, you see the entire geometry of Ranavalona court, the tiled angle, the shade trees, the fountains choked with blossoms, and you realize something: every corner has a scent. Every hallway has a mood. This place doesn't operate on clocks or calendars. It runs on perfume. Below you, servants scatter fanning trails of cinnamon powder along the flagstones. Not for cleaning, for communication. The pattern spells something only the Queen's inner circle would decode. You're not sure what it says, but the scent is strong, sharp, intentional, like a warning disguised as dessert. You head down. In a small adjoining chamber, the Queen receives an unexpected visitor, a noblewoman from the Northern Highlands, draped in layers of fine raffia and embroidered fabric, face impassive scent, complicated. You smell it before anyone else reacts. Nutmeg, musk, and a very specific dried berry used almost exclusively in funeral rituals. It's a power play, a reminder of past deaths. You glance sideways at the Queen, whose expression doesn't shift even slightly. But her hand reaches for her sash. A signal. An attendant steps forward with a box. She opens it. Inside, a vial of oil so pungent you flinch. Civet and burnt lemon rind, a blend used historically for battle when diplomacy has failed. The Queen does not use it. She simply places it on the table between them. No words. Historians still argue whether this meeting ended in a treaty or a threat. The records diverge. But the legend says the noblewoman left wearing a new scent, lavender, and regret. You follow the Queen as she departs the room, leaving the door half open. Intentional. She walks past a colonnade, pausing briefly to inhale from a potted plant blooming in the shade. Not an exotic one. Just lemongrass again. But this time paired with a creeping vine vonemba, traditionally used for cleansing. Or erasure, she murmurs to herself. You catch one word, replaceable, and then she walks on. Later that evening, you find yourself deep inside the Queen's library. It's not filled with books, not exactly. It's a scent library. Shelves upon shelves of jars, sachets, scrolls wrapped in scented bark letters, pressed with dried petals. The air in here is layered, generational. 1,000 arguments, reconciliations, threats, and flirtations, sealed in beeswax and memory. You run your fingers along the edge of a scroll. It smells of rose and ash. A breakup letter, probably. You stop at a cabinet. The drawer is labeled in an old script. You struggle to make it out, but the scent tells you everything: crushed mint and orange flower water. The scent of mourning that isn't quite grief. The scent of strategic loss. You think of all the times the Queen has chosen not to punish someone, and how that mercy had a fragrance. Then the door opens again. She enters, alone. This is rare. She walks slowly, like memory is heavy today. She stops by a shelf of tiny clay vessels, each sealed with wax and cord. She selects one, breaks it open. The smell hits you instantly. Rain on dry earth, green mango skin, smoke from a grass fire. You've never smelled this one before. She doesn't wear it. She just inhales, once, twice. Then she reseals it and puts it back. Perhaps it was her mother's, or her own once before the throne. Outside, thunder murmurs, and somewhere in the garden, the tuberose open too early. You close your eyes. Even history holds its breath now. You open your eyes to a flickering hallway and the gentle crackle of oil lamps. Shadows stretch along the polished wooden walls, as though scent itself has shape and is slipping around corners ahead of you. You trail them instinctively, nose first, like a bloodhound that wears silk. Down this corridor, past carved panels of ancestor queens, something changes in the air. You smell it before you hear it. Rosewood, crushed lime peel, a hint of copper. You round the corner and step into a courtroom, not the Western kind. No rows of benches or powdered wigs, but the Queen's judgment hall. Here justice smells sweet or bitter. Depending on where you stand, the floor is patterned in overlapping squares. Some say each square represents a kind of outcome, reconciliation, punishment, exile. You're not sure. But what you do notice are the bowls of smoking herbs lining the room's perimeter. Each bowl contains a different blend chosen not to please, but to probe. You sit silently against the wall. The trial has already begun. At the center, a young woman kneels. Her eyes are lowered, her hands trembling in her lap. She has been accused of passing secrets to foreign traders. A serious charge. Treason, potentially. She does not speak. The queen sits elevated, framed by cascading green vines and the ever-present shimmer of ilang-ilang in the air. But it's not her voice that questions, it's the perfume. A thin servant, nearly transparent in his movement, steps forward and kneels beside the accused. He leans in close, not to speak, but to sniff. Deeply, once at the hairline, once at the collar, once at the fingers. Then he bows and backs away. She smells of vetiver, he says quietly, but not of this palace. There's a stir in the crowd. The queen doesn't react. She lifts her hand and another servant brings a bundle cloth soaked in patchouli and lemon balm. She presses it to her own cheek as if to test it. This is the queen's version of cross-examination. Historians still argue about the extent to which scent influenced court judgments. Some say it was purely symbolic. Others claim it was everything, that if you didn't smell right, you weren't right. The woman is asked one question. "Where did you sleep last night?" she stammers. "With my aunt, by the river." The queen closes her eyes. The incense bowls are altered. One servant replaces a resin blend with something sharper, turmeric root and dried bark. Smoke unfurls with a biting tang. The woman begins to sweat. You smell it before anyone else. Lavender, synthetic, imported. The crowd shifts. Lavender does not grow wild near the river, and it does not cling this long without being intentionally worn. The queen leans forward, hands clasped beneath her chin. Her own scent deepens, clove and orange peel, always a sign she's reaching a verdict. But instead of punishment, she gestures. A guard approaches. He opens a smaller box. Inside is a scrap of fabric soaked in an unfamiliar oil. It smells like salt and regret. He presses it into the woman's hands. She looks confused. The queen speaks. "Wear this until I call you again." There is no jail, no exile, not yet. She has been marked. The queen will smell her in every hallway. Later, as the hall empties, you remain seated, trying to understand what you just witnessed. Was it a warning? An accusation in disguise? A way to let her own guilt steep until it fermented into a confession? You follow the queen as she exits through the side corridor, the scent of lemongrass and ash trailing behind her, like a verdict that never needed words. In her chambers, she washes her hands, but not with water, with perfume. From a bowl of infused petals and sap, she dips her fingers, rubs them dry on linen, and exhales softly. This is ritual. This is control. And this is why no one, not even her most loyal ministers, ever forgets that justice in her court always smells like something specific. You just have to know how to sniff it. You follow her out into the daylight again, squinting against the sudden brightness. But your nose remains sharp. The queen moves through the courtyard, not with haste, but with purpose. Around her, clusters of advisors gather like bees, not daring to speak unless spoken to, but watching, always watching for the real signs. Today she smells of sandalwood and orange flower. A calm blend, but not a passive one. It says, "I am listening. I am deciding." You'd better be ready. A guard steps forward to announce an arrival. A delegation from a coastal province. Merchants, diplomats, maybe even a rival noble disguised as a cousin. You can smell them before you see them: salt air, wet bark, and an overuse of something sharp and foreign. European cologne. The queen's eyes flicker. That's all. She takes her seat beneath the great palmyra canopy, where the wind moves slowly and the air hangs heavy. You join the crowd of not quite visible observers. From here, it looks like a formal welcome. Polite nods, ceremonial bows, shared greetings. But to anyone fluent in scent, it's a full-blown interrogation. Each visitor brings tribute spices, cloth, and most tellingly perfume. They offer vials wrapped in silk, some containing local ingredients, others imported extravagantly. One man offers myrrh from Yemen, another saffron from India, but the queen's nostrils twitch before the stopper is fully removed. She waves it away, too desperate. Another offers Madagascar's own cinnamon oil. That earns a slight smile, but it's the final bottle, small, dark, unassuming, that makes her pause. She uncorks it herself. Inhales lemongrass. Not imported, not expensive, but made by the rebels in the hills. This is a message, one no one else notices. She closes the bottle, slips it into her sash. "Let's walk," she says quietly. The delegation, confused, follows her into the garden. There among the medicinal trees, she speaks slowly and carefully. But you're barely listening to the words. You're watching her hands. One reaches into her sash, touches the rebel blend. A decision is being weighed. Historians still argue whether this moment marked the Queen's secret correspondence with rebel factions, or if it was simply her testing the loyalty of the delegation. No documents confirm anything, but one thing is true, that Vial was never seen again. Later, after the visitors have been dismissed, you find her in the royal bathhouse. Not to bathe, but to blend. Here the walls sweat with heat. Clay pots bubble gently over embers. The Queen stands at the center, surrounded by trays of dried herbs, petals, seeds, and roots. No one else touches them. This is her private craft. She grinds cardamom into paste, mixes it with wild ginger, adds a splash of civet oil stolen from the animal pens at dawn. Then she stops. Thinks. She reaches for a final ingredient, crushed eucalyptus leaf. Rare, sharp, memory-tinged. The blend she's making is not for herself. You realize suddenly she's composing a message. Not one to be read, one to be worn. Later that day, a courier, young, plain, deliberately forgettable, leaves the palace with a sealed sachet. He doesn't know what's inside, but his skin will carry the scent for days. And wherever he walks, rebels will know the Queen has spoken. Back in her quarters, she sits before a small wooden shrine where dried frangipani lace rays curled beside a bowl of ashes. She adds a drop of the same blend to the altar, then presses her palms together. You lean in. She whispers, "You remember me, don't you?" The ashes say nothing, but the air answers with the faintest rustle of old perfume. You recognize it. Jasmine and bloodroot, a blend last worn the night her sister was poisoned. The past-like scent never truly leaves. It only lingers. Night falls not with a chill, but with a thickness. You feel it in your throat before your skin warm, perfumed, intentional. Somewhere deep in the palace, bowls of burnt resin have been lit again, this time with darker oils, labdanum, tamarind, and a touch of civet. Tonight is no ordinary evening. You slip back toward the Queen's wing, guided by flickering lamp glow and the syrupy scent of clove-heavy smoke. As you move, you notice fewer guards, fewer whispers, but the perfume overwhelming. You step into the scented courtroom, an interior chamber rarely used unless the matter is delicate, dangerous, or both. The room is hexagonal, small, almost suffocating. Woven tapestries hang from all sides, each one infused with a different scent. No two corners smell alike. One is powdered rose and dried tamarind skin. Another is bitter ginger and violet root. Each blend crafted to evoke reaction, memory, emotion. At the center, the accused. He kneels, dressed plainly. No adornments, no gifts, no excuses. The Queen sits across from him. Her perfume is subtle tonight, too subtle. You recognize cardamom, but barely. That's the trick. She wears so little of it that the air itself feels suspicious. A servant brings out a wooden bowl, inside a ribbon of hair. The Queen doesn't look at it. She closes her eyes. A second servant steps forward. In his hand, a narrow wooden comb soaked in rose vinegar. He brushes it once, just once, along the man's scalp. The reaction is immediate. His eyes water, his mouth parts in shock. You smell it at the same time as him. Clove and mint oil, distinct, deliberate. The Queen opens her eyes. "You were in the House of the Orchid," she says, voice flat. The man begins to deny it, too quickly. Historians still argue whether the House of the Orchid was a brothel, a foreign consulate, or a rebel outpost. What is known is that its signature scent, clove, mint, and pine, could cling to a man's hair for days. The Queen signals. A third servant enters with a curved incense stick. It burns blue. The scent wormwood and sandalwood. The Queen's preferred blend for liars. The man sweats visibly, but it's not the heat. You inhale sharply. Underneath the sweat, something shifts. Lavender, foreign, imported. He's met with Europeans. The Queen doesn't need confirmation. She lifts a small sachet and tosses it lightly at his knees. Inside, a powder made from dried pepper leaf and saltbush. A smell of banishment. He knows the message. You can see the moment his body accepts the truth. He bows, once, then twice. He will not return. As he's led out, you remain in the room. The air feels cleaner somehow, though the scents still mix like half-formed memories. The Queen doesn't rise immediately. She holds a small vial in her palm and tips it gently over a nearby incense bowl. The scent blooms ylang-ylang and crushed sandalbark. Comforting, grounded, a blend for release. She's letting the air forget. You slip outside again into a courtyard where the night air smells different, crisper, less humid. Here, a cluster of young trainees practice reading scent histories. They sit in a circle blindfolded, taking turns identifying ingredients from hidden jars. The teacher, an elderly woman with a silver nose ring, corrects them, not by voice but by scent. She dabs oils on their wrists, approval correction warning. One boy guesses wrong 3 times. His 4th try is close citrus, but dried. The teacher rewards him with a dab of neroli on his temple. He smiles. You wonder how many of them will grow up to be spies, or judges, or queens. You hear a soft bell. Back in the main hall, the queen walks alone. Her robe trails the faintest dusting of powdered frankincense. The servants part as she passes, but no one speaks. Her perfume has changed again. This time it smells like endings. You find yourself back within the palace's winding maze, just as the sun climbs past the eastern towers, casting sharp beams through slatted windows. Dust glints in the air, a golden speck swirling through a place that never truly sleeps, only shifts. You follow the queen's trail, not by footsteps, but by scent. Today she smells of vetiver and pepperleaf, a blend she wears when preparing for war. Not swords-drawn war, mind you, but the quieter kind, political tension-coded letters, rival ministers breathing too loudly at court. You arrive just in time to witness an exchange behind closed latticed doors. A group of regional governors stands in half-circle formation, all bowing, all wary. At the center of their arrangement lies a folded scarf, plain ivory, unassuming, except for the unmistakable scent rising from its silk weave. Ylang-ylang, lemon oil, and something darker, maybe crushed bark or dried turmeric root. The queen does not touch the scarf. She simply inhales. One nostril flares, a single eyebrow lifts. That's enough. She gestures and a servant retrieves the cloth, sealing it into a clay vessel. This will go to the record keepers, or the spies, depending on what it means. Historians still argue whether that moment was the first warning flare against rebellion in the Northern Territories, or merely a coded complaint about livestock tariffs. But everyone agrees the scarf became a symbol, a perfume-slick prophecy. Later, as the hall empties, a young aide runs after the queen holding a small brass case with trembling fingers. From the traders in Morondava, he whispers. She opens it. Inside are 6 small glass vials, each wrapped in fine raffia. You can see condensation on one of them, cold-pressed, rare, costly. The queen uncaps the first, clove oil. She closes it. The second, bitter orange rind. She closes it. The third, and suddenly she stills. You smell it too, a strange metallic tang beneath the citrus, something unsettling. Benzoin, she murmurs, but corrupted. She doesn't hand the vial back. She drops it gently into a nearby brazier. It crackles once, then hisses gone in smoke. Someone is trying to send a message. Someone foolish. You follow her into her study where she keeps her private fragrance records, not scrolls, not maps, but rows of cloth, each infused with a different combination of oils, marked with thin, wax-sealed tags. This is her true diplomacy archive. She pulls one labdanum and dried green fig, an old treaty blend, then another tamarind resin smoke and sea salt. You smelled this before at the southern port months ago, a port that has since fallen quiet. She arranges the cloths on her desk. A pattern is forming, not of scent, but of behavior. The queen reads perfumes the way others read facial expressions. She dabs a bit of vanilla onto a scrap of linen, folds it, and sets it aside. That's for the children at the training school, a scent of reassurance to calm nerves before their first exams. Then she mixes 2 new oils in a shallow dish, lemongrass and ashes. You recognize that one. It's not for reassurance, it's for remembrance. She dips a brush into the blend and writes a character onto parchment, not words, not numbers. Just a shape, a sigil only her inner circle understands. This note will go to a certain general. You've seen him once before, tall, grim, wearing nothing scented but soap. He'll know what it means. Outside, the wind shifts. A boy enters breathless. He bows. There's word from the east. A scent marker was found hidden in silk beneath imported tea leaves. The queen nods. She knew before he opened his mouth. You leave the room quietly. Later that night, as the queen stands under the stars, rubbing jasmine oil onto her hands, you catch the faintest trace of something new. A blend she hasn't worn in months. A blend last seen on the night of the failed coup. She's not speaking to anyone tonight, but her perfume says, I remember, and I'm not done. You follow her scent into the cool of the inner corridors where lamps flicker against carved walls, and time feels paused like the palace is holding its breath. The queen walks with no attendants, now only her shadow and the whisper of vetiver trailing her steps. Her robe is plain today, soft blue, but her perfume is not. It bristles. This is not for ceremony. This is for secrets. She enters a small room behind the library. You almost miss it, just a warped panel that gives way to darkness. Inside, a spiral staircase curling downward. You descend behind her into the bowels of the palace, where stone walls sweat and the air is heavy with something ancient. The scent here is not floral or herbal. It's leather, wax, and a faint tinge of mold clinging to wet bark. This is where the essential spies work. The room opens into a narrow chamber lined with long tables, candlelit, and cluttered with vials, satchel samples. No guards, no ceremony, just concentration. One woman is sorting bundles of herbs. Another is pouring oil through a sieve made of fine bone. A third is scribbling into a journal, though her ink smells like anise. These are the Queen's invisible advisors. They move without speaking. Their tools are not daggers or codes. Their weapons are scent. You watch as one unfurls a cloth map. Each province is marked not with names, but with fragrance notes: cardamom for the southern coast, ylang ylang for the eastern highlands, eucalyptus, where the resistance last flickered to life. At the center of the table sits a sealed clay jar. The Queen approaches, breaks the seal, and the room stills. You smell it even before the lid clears: dried lavender, bloodroot, civet, a ghost of something that shouldn't exist. "It's the rebel blend," whispers the woman with the journal. "No," the Queen replies, "it's an imitation." Historians still argue about this moment, whether it marked a discovery of foreign agents mimicking local scent codes or a new faction entirely. But here now it's clear to her someone is pretending to be Malagasy and getting it almost right. Too right. The Queen pinches a bit of the dried mix and rubs it between her fingers. She frowns. "They've used tonka beans," she says. "That doesn't grow here." She turns to the wall and plucks a narrow stick of incense, lights it. The air fills with clove and eucalyptus, her signal for silence. Everyone backs away. She closes her eyes, breathes, and then speaks softly. "We were imitated once before." The room tenses. You know the story, or fragments of it. Long ago, a foreign merchant arrived wearing a blend almost identical to the Queen's childhood formula. He'd been briefed over briefed by someone with too much knowledge. It took the Queen less than a day to discover the spy, and less than a week for the merchant's ship to disappear off the coast. No records mention it explicitly, but the scent still remembered. The Queen places the lid back on the jar. "Track it. Don't confront." A woman nods, then begins dabbing the mixture onto woven talismans, small bracelets to be worn by informants. Each one calibrated to attract the imposter's allies. Perfume here is bait. As the Queen ascends the stairs once more, her scent has shifted again, less fire, more frost. You smell neroli now. Soft, bitter, exact. Back in her chambers, she opens a drawer containing bundles of cloth bound by twine. Each one is marked with a tiny shell. Each one represents a correspondence, perfume not penned. She selects one, sniffs. You recognize cedar and lime leaf, the code for her most elusive spy. She adds a drop of rose oil, her reply, and reseals it. This letter will never be opened, only worn. Later, as she leans against the open balcony, staring out into the blank blue of dusk, she crushes a sprig of ravinsar between her palms. She closes her eyes and lets the wind carry its scent away. You don't know where it will land, but someone does. You wake or rise or float into steam, not mist, not fog, steam, heavy herb, thick and purposeful. You are in the Queen's ritual bathhouse, where negotiations are as fluid as the water and just as easily boiled. The room is dim, windowless, glowing only with torchlight and the watery sheen of polished stone. Pools of varying temperatures line the space, some gently steaming, others still and reflective. But it's the scents that command you, layer upon layer of them. You catch eucalyptus and crushed cinnamon bark, then neroli, then tamarind leaf, and under it all sulfur. Not unpleasant, but primordial. This is not for pleasure, it is for power. The Queen is submerged to the shoulders in one of the hotter pools. Her hair is piled atop her head, wrapped in soaked linen infused with hibiscus tea. At first glance, she looks relaxed, languid even, but you followed her long enough to know better. This is strategy. Across from her, sitting on a low stone ledge, are two guests, one local noblewoman, one foreign emissary. Both sweat profusely. Neither dares wipe their brow. They're immersed in what is essentially a scented interrogation. Historians still debate whether these meetings were ceremonial or politically binding. But inside the steamy chamber, the answer steams off the skin. The queen begins with small talk, local rainfall, the markets. But she gestures for her attendants to add specific herbs to each guest: pool turmeric and mint for the foreigner, lemongrass and basil for the local. Within minutes, their bodies begin to respond. The noblewoman leans forward slightly, breathing more deeply. The basil opens her lungs. The emissary fidgets. The mint is making him sweat too much. He smells uncomfortable. The queen watches. Then she lifts a carved wooden spoon and ladles a thick milky liquid over her own shoulders. The air instantly fills with ylang-ylang and clove, a blend used exclusively in royal ceremonies of decision-making. Everyone recognizes it. Everyone shifts slightly. She begins to speak of trade routes, but the guests know better. She is speaking of allegiances. You notice that the foreign emissary has begun to smell like rose oil, not from his own supply, but absorbed from the steam. You catch a flicker of discomfort in his eyes. He knows what it means. In this context, rose oil isn't romantic. It's submissive. He is being softened. Meanwhile, the noblewoman speaks more freely now, emboldened by the basil, the lemongrass. Her voice lifts. She leans into her words. She believes she is being favored. The queen listens, then gestures for a towel. An attendant rushes forward, offering one soaked in frankincense and citron. She dries her arms with it, a scent that says, "This meeting is over." The guests rise, bowing, slipping slightly on the damp stone. Their scents trail behind them like unspoken thoughts. You follow as they exit into a dry corridor lined with fans and linen panels, each one dusted with neutral powder to absorb the negotiation. Outside the chamber, a court scribe waits not to record words, but smells. She takes note. Clove dominated. Rose absorbed. Basil responded. The queen re-emerges wrapped in a robe of thin cotton that smells of sandalwood and moss. She walks slowly to her private garden and sits beneath the same tree she favors for quiet judgment. An aide approaches. He kneels, whispers something. She nods. From a pouch at her waist, she pulls a vial, unstoppers it, dabs a drop behind each ear. You smell it faintly. Cardamom, tamarind, and vetiver. The confrontation blend. A new conversation is coming. But this one won't happen in water. It will happen in public. And the queen intends to win it before a single word is spoken. She rises, lets the robe fall open just slightly, letting the scent unfurl into the garden. Someone nearby coughs involuntarily. They smell what's coming. They know they've already lost. You drift through midday haze, following the queen's trail as it winds into the sunlit palace courtyard. There's music in the air, soft drums, twangs of a valiha harp, but no one is smiling. This isn't a celebration. This is a demonstration. Around the central fountain, nobles and merchants gather, all in fine fabrics, their collars dabbed with scent, too much scent. You can smell the anxiety as clearly as the jasmine vines that edge the garden walls. Clove, myrrh, even sandalwood layered too thickly. Everyone here is trying to smell important, but only one woman succeeds without effort. The queen steps into the open, wearing a robe dyed the color of bruised plums and trimmed with raffia. She's adorned with almost no jewelry, no crown, just a single scent, vanilla and ash. A powerful contrast. Vanilla is warmth, familiarity, even affection. Ash is a reminder. Today her scent says, "I remember who you are, and I remember what you owe." She lifts her chin. The crowd parts. She doesn't have to command silence, it arrives on its own. Two young girls enter next, each carrying a lacquered tray. On the trays are perfume vials arranged like offerings, but no one is receiving them today. They're here to sort the guests. One by one, a court attendant approaches the nobles. Each person is offered a strip of fabric scented with a blend from the queen's archives. The moment they inhale, they're watched closely. One man wrinkles his nose, another gulps. A third closes her eyes, visibly calmed. What's happening here isn't taste testing. It's a classification ritual. The queen is evaluating who understands the language of scent, who respects it, and who simply pretends. You lean in as a cloth, laced with neroli and civet, is passed to a wealthy merchant from the eastern ports. He smiles too quickly, sniffs too loudly. You know it. He has no idea what he's doing. The queen takes note. She signals to a nearby attendant. A hand lifts. A feather fan stirs the air infused with pepper leaf. The merchant stiffens. The queen doesn't dismiss him. That would make waves. Instead, she allows him to stay. But the scent now lingering on his robe marks him clearly unreliable. Historians still debate whether the classification rituals were systematic or spontaneous. But evidence remains entire families rose or fell based on how they responded to certain blends. One noblewoman years ago collapsed after inhaling a grief blend meant only for the queen's private use. She was later found to be hoarding royal sandalwood in secret. Coincidence not likely. You circle the crowd now, watching as whispers pass. Someone mispronounces the name of a flower. Another incorrectly identifies nutmeg as cinnamon. These are not minor errors. These are social missteps. And the queen's scent shifts accordingly. A new blend, faint but unmistakable, basil, bloodroot, and oil from the Vomana tree. This is corrective. She is not angry, but she is adjusting the balance. Across the courtyard, a small commotion. A young courtier, barely more than a boy, has fainted after inhaling a vial containing civet and ironwood resin. His friend steadies him. The queen gestures that he be brought forward. You hold your breath. He kneels. She steps forward, pulls a vial from her sash, opens it. The scent is warm, comforting, sweet orange and mint. She dabs a drop behind his ear, then nods. Learn better, she says softly. He will. The queen turns and walks toward her throne. The lesson is complete. Every guest leaves with a scent clinging to them, one that will be read by others long after they've gone. An unspoken label: loyal, nervous, ambitious, ignorant. The queen needs no scribes today. Her perfume has recorded everything. The sun has dipped lower now, casting slanted gold across the palace walls. You follow the queen's trail once again, but this time it veers from the ceremonial spaces. Deeper, quieter, toward the inner chambers where politics sleep beside whispers and sometimes don't sleep at all. Tonight, something's different. The queen has chosen a blend that's not from the royal archives. You can tell immediately. It's sharper, wilder, a stringent sweetness from fermented papaya rind, cinnamon, and beneath it all a ghost of wormwood. This is the scent she wears only when testing trust. You're headed toward the private court of intimacy, a place rarely mentioned in official records and never openly discussed. This chamber isn't for foreign visitors or court rituals. It's where alliances are forged or broken through closeness. A man is waiting, not a noble, not a soldier. Something slipperier, a would-be lover recently returned from the southern frontier, with news stories and, according to palace rumor, a face too charming to trust. He bows deeply when she enters. The queen says nothing. She gestures to the mat beside her, then sits. They are less than a meter apart, and neither speaks. You inhale the tension. The queen wears clove and bitterness, a scent that blunts adoration. But she's also dabbed ylang-ylang on her fingertips, which opens conversation. She's giving him a chance. He wears something foreign, ambergris, faint musk, and a sweet pine resin. You wrinkle your nose. Too polished, too rehearsed. He starts to speak, but she cuts him off with a single flick of her fan. The fan is scented lime peel and salt. Tell the truth, it says. He starts again, this time slower, less practiced. He speaks of shifting loyalties in the South, of a rebel chieftain claiming divine visions, of guards with uncertain pay. The queen listens, expression unreadable. Then she leans forward, dabs a small amount of oil from her sash onto his wrist. The smell hits you instantly. Frangipani, cinnamon, and civet. This is the blend used in truth trials. Once it touches the skin, the wearer is watched for 3 days. If their scent shifts unnaturally, if they attempt to cover or alter it, it means they have something to hide. He doesn't protest, but his smile falters. You'll stay in the East Wing, she says. We'll speak again. You watch him bow once more, deeper now, as if gravity has grown heavier on his shoulders. When he's gone, the queen signals a servant. Seal his bedding in eucalyptus, not for comfort, for surveillance. You leave her chamber and move into the hallway where her personal guards whisper among themselves, not with words, but with perfume. Each carries a different scent marker assigned daily. Today, basil on the shoulder means follow. Vetiver on the neck means observe. Musk on the wrist means intervene. The guard trailing the visitor wears all three. Later that night, you find the queen walking alone through her private garden. She trails her fingers through the night-blooming jasmine, letting the flowers brush her skin. You can smell that she switched blends again. Now it's nothing at all. No oils, no powders, just skin and wind. This is how you know she's thinking. You follow her to the ancestral altar. She kneels, places a single drop of camphor and fig oil on the stones. Then she says a name. You don't recognize it, but the air seems to tighten in response. Historians still argue whether Ranavalona truly believed in ancestral consultation or merely performed the rituals for appearances. But watching her now alone unscented, whispering into a bowl of ashes, you suspect this is the only moment all day that is hers. When she rises, she does not return to the palace immediately. She walks to the eastern edge where the mountain winds carry the scent of fires burning miles away. And just before she turns to go, she lifts her wrist to her face. She smells her own skin and nods. He lied about something. By morning, the palace has tightened its breath. You can feel it in the way the curtains rustle slower, the way the birds quiet mid-call. The queen's perfume is the first sign, camphor and cardamom, subtle but flammable. You've learned enough to know this isn't her waiting blend. This is preemption. She walks faster than usual today through the corridors that lead not to the throne, but to the Hall of Envoys. Foreigners again. French this time. You can already smell them before they speak, a haze of soap and orange cologne, all smothering notes and cloying citrus. She hates that smell, but today she does not dismiss it. She studies it. The hall is arranged as if for a banquet, though no food will be served. Instead, bowls of water stand at intervals, each laced with oils. You pass one that smells of basil and dried mango peel. Another gives off ginger and bark. This isn't decoration, it's olfactory control. Each station is designed to counterbalance or highlight certain responses. The queen enters last, her perfume neutral. That alone is unsettling. She's wearing a base of unfragranced coconut oil and rice milk. You'd think that would be a blank slate, but in this palace, blank is a threat. The French envoy smiles too wide. He opens with greetings, gestures a bundle of papers, a gift attar of roses. It's exquisite, you can tell by the bottle. Cut crystal, imported silver clasp. He's trying. She does not touch it. Instead, she opens a small pouch and drops a pinch of dried seaweed into the closest incense bowl. The smoke twists upward with a briny, almost metallic note. The message, I know your coastlines. I know your ships. He speaks again, this time of treaties and ports' shared interests. She fans herself. The fan is infused with frankincense and crushed mint. It's not welcoming, it's interrogative. He sweats. You can smell it now, his cologne cracks, revealing the salt of nervousness beneath. The queen leans slightly forward. You've been in Tamatava, she says quietly, but the letter you carry mentions Mahajanga. He blinks. She inhales delicately. Your papers smell of clay dust and cloves. That's inland. Historians still argue whether Ranavalona truly used scent to triangulate geography, or if these moments were performances, part truth, part theater. But here in this moment, she has him frozen in his chair with just a few syllables and a nose that doesn't miss much. She smiles slightly, then gestures to her aide. Bring the translator. The young man enters, not with words, but with oils. He carries a set of scent markers used to bridge diplomatic gaps, not language, but intention. He lays four before the envoy, each in a shallow bowl. Tamarind and rosewood for mutual respect. Vanilla and ash for apology. Civet and jasmine for deception. Ravensara and clove for warning. The queen gestures. Choose one, she says, before we continue. You've never seen this method before. Neither has he. He hesitates, looking around unsure. He picks vanilla and ash. The queen lifts an eyebrow. So, an apology, she says, voice even. Good. She rises. Then the apology must be delivered properly. She walks forward and dabs the oil on his sleeve herself. He stiffens. In any other court, that would be an honor. In hers, it means she now owns the smell of your remorse. As she leaves, you smell her change again. This time, basil and pepper leaf. Controlled aggression. She has what she needs, but she isn't done. Hours later, you follow her to a quiet balcony where the sun has just begun to sink behind the ridges. A servant approaches holding a sealed pouch. It smells like citrus and regret. Inside, a letter unsigned. A warning from the coast. Too late, she mutters, and drops the pouch into a nearby fire basin. Smoke rises, sharp, bitter, final. The wind carries it far. Someone somewhere will smell it and understand they missed their chance. The smoke lingers into the evening, curling over rooftops and vanishing into the pinking sky. You follow it, though really you're following her. The queen does not return to the throne room or her garden. She goes further out toward the edge of the palace compound, to a stone arch that he opens onto a narrow stairwell carved into the hillside. Few come here. This path leads not to diplomats or ministers, but to the resistance. Not openly, not officially, but the queen knows every crevice of her kingdom and every message the wind carries. The scent on her tonight is hushed ravinsar and banana leaf, soft and earthy, the kind of blend that calms animals and babies. But it's not for comfort. it's for approach. She descends in silence, flanked by only one guard, barefoot, unperfumed. The stairwell is dark, cold, and alive with echoes of water somewhere deep beneath. You walk carefully behind her, ears full of heartbeat, nose full of stone and moss. At the base is a wooden door, no different from any grain storehouse, except for the smudge of ash and citron pressed above the frame. It's a signal. She knocks once, then again. A moment passes, then the door opens. Inside, 3 figures cloaked in fabric, dyed with local berries. Their faces are clean. Too clean. You realize quickly they've recently washed in river water laced with herbs. This too is code. They speak little. What's said is brief, but everything is scented. One of them carries a bundle palm-wrapped and pressed to his chest like a child. When opened, it reveals sachets, tiny linen pouches, filled with dried orange peel, salt-dried lavender, and something sharp and unplaceable. The queen takes one, holds it to her nose. She nods. "This is the signal, Blench," she says quietly. For safe houses, the cloaked man nods, planted at river bends, beneath shrine stones. She inhales again. You see the calculation in her eyes. Not memory this time, not ritual. This is logistics. These perfumes are not royal, they are revolutionary. Historians still debate whether Ranavalona secretly supported anti-colonial insurgencies or simply tolerated them when useful. But here now you watch her smell rebellion and approve. The woman beside her unwraps a second bundle. This one is a wax-sealed envelope, unmarked, unbound. But it reeks burned cassava and bloodroot. The queen winces slightly. A heavy scent. It means betrayal. They tell her of an informant, one close, one trusted. She listens, does not reply, but from her sash she pulls a vial no one has seen before. She uncorks it slowly, and the entire room changes. The scent is overwhelming. Myrrh, clove, smoked bark. It's the scent of vengeance. She dabs it on her collarbone. "I will wear this until the traitor is gone," she says. She hands the vial to the woman. "Distribute to our watchers. If they smell it, they know the queen is moving." Outside, a dog barks twice, then stops. One of the rebels lifts his head. "It's time," he whispers. The queen nods. No further instructions, no orders, just scent. She exits quietly, trailing cinnamon and fire. You follow her back up the stair, the wind pulling at her robe, dragging her perfume through the narrow channel of stone like a battle hymn. Back inside the palace, no one speaks of where she went. The court goes on with its choreography, chimes, trays, folded petitions. But something's different. Even the guards notice it. They straighten, they check their weapons. Because the queen smells like resistance. And that means things are about to change. The next morning arrives with a dry heat that settles into the stones like memory. You awaken to silence, but not the peaceful kind. It's the kind of quiet that precedes rearrangement. People move softer, eyes linger longer. The air smells like anticipation and eucalyptus. You find the queen pacing the outer rim of the palace where walls meet wilderness. This isn't her usual walk. She's inspecting something. Not the garden, not the guard posts, the houses, specifically the floral fortress's residences built along the outskirts that appear modest but hum with strategic purpose. They are homes, yes, but also defensive scent barriers. You watch as she runs her hand along the rim of a clay pot resting outside a doorway. Inside it, dried lemongrass, peppermint, crushed acacia. You recognize the mix, a traditional blend for warding off uninvited spirits, but here it's used to signal safety. Each house has its own blend. One is thick with vanilla and vetiver, used to mark a house of neutral territory where neither spies nor soldiers are permitted to engage. Another reeks of civet and ash, almost foul the universal warning. Do not enter unless summoned. The queen nods approvingly. These aren't new systems. They're part of an old network one she helped design. She approaches a smaller house near the edge of a grove. A young girl opens the door and bows low, the scent of banana leaf and tamarind rising from her hair. This is a healer's home where wounded couriers come to disappear. Inside walls are lined with sachets tied with string. No writing, just knots and scent. One string, 2 loops, 1 twist, safe passage. Another single loop, tight knot, do not speak. The queen chooses one and ties it to her wrist. She says nothing. You realize it's her field blend, a rare gesture. This means she's preparing to move without her court's knowledge. Historians still debate how often Ranavalona slipped out of the palace under her attendants' noses. Some records suggest only twice. Others say it was monthly, even weekly, each time guided by perfume signposts that only the loyal could read. You follow her into a neighboring home more fortress than residence. Its exterior is covered in flowering vines, stephanotis, vacua, and wild ginger. But it's not for beauty. These vines are natural diffusers releasing specific oils depending on time of day and temperature. Inside, you see why this house is feared. It's where the queen keeps her decoy blends. The walls are lined with jars of misleading perfumes, one that mimics mourning, one that simulates fertility, another that smells like illness. She uses them like camouflage. You watch as she removes her wrist sachet and replaces it with a false trail, a patchouli-heavy concoction used to mimic traveling royal cousins. Anyone tracking her by scent will chase the wrong perfume entirely. She walks to a shallow fire pit at the center of the room, lights a slow-burning disc soaked in dried coconut husk and civet fat. The scent will rise into the air and hover for hours, drawing spies like moths to a decoy flame. Then she's gone again back into the trees. This time she's heading north toward the old path that skirts the cliffs. You can't see it on a map, but the fragrant markers show the way. You spot them as you go, a woven fan dusted with orange peel and salt tucked into a tree fork safe to pass. A pile of stones with dried ravinsara leaves layered underneath message received. A rotting log filled with charred cardamom pods, danger ahead. She stops once to tie her hair with a strip of cloth soaked in clove and vanilla. A warning for anyone who gets too close. This is not a queen at rest. Back at the palace, the scent left in her chambers, chamomile and ash, is still fresh. A signal to her court, I am not gone. I am simply somewhere else. You watch as her advisors sniff the air confused. The scent should mean morning, but the ashes are still warm. They know what this means. She's hunting something, and she's doing it on foot. The queen walks deeper into the forest, the wind carrying her scent just enough for the loyal to follow, but not enough for her enemies to catch up. You follow her through the forest as the morning fades into a still, sticky afternoon. The queen walks in silence, moving over the red dirt paths like someone retracing memories etched in the soil. Her perfume, what little she wears now, has thinned to the scent of sweat and dried lemongrass carried more by skin than oil. This is not concealment. This is adaptation. You pass through a narrow ravine where sunlight dapples through tall bamboo. Ahead at the bend of a hill is a cluster of figures. Traders, 3 men and a woman unloading goods beneath a woven canopy. They don't bow, they don't need to. They recognize her. This isn't a royal visit, this is business, and here perfume is currency. One of the men unwraps a bundle tied in palm leaf. Inside, strips of bark soaked in something pungent and golden. You smell it before the queen touches it. Ylang ylang and sandalwood aged until the fragrance thickens like syrup. The traders trade in more than scent. They trade in alliances. The queen examines their goods without hurry, resins, herbs, tinctures pressed into tiny ceramic pots. But it's the bottle of deep green glass that stops her hand. She uncorks it. Cardamom, nutmeg, pepper, the blend used to seal wartime pacts in the central provinces. You've seen it in the archives, but this one is different, fresher, brighter, laced with an edge of something acidic. Where did you get this, she asks. The trader doesn't lie. Up north, near the border, in exchange for iron tools. The queen holds the vial closer, sniffs again. She knows instantly it's been changed. Subtly, but the note of fermented lime rind wasn't in the original blend. Someone's modifying sacred scent, spinning the perfume of peace into something else, a challenge maybe, a mockery. She places the vial back on the mat and speaks evenly. This should not be circulating. The traders exchange glances, suddenly stiff. You'll receive new blends, she says, official ones, and the rest, the woman asks. The queen tilts her head. Burn them. You trail her as she moves toward the back of the encampment, where perfumers have laid out thin wooden boards in the sun. Each holds a sample of rare extract, drying or cooling cinnamon sap, hardened into beads, orange oil glistening on banana leaf bark shavings, steeping in dark tea. Here she inspects carefully. She isn't just buying, she's standardizing. Historians still argue whether Queen Ranavalona tried to implement a state-controlled perfume system, one where all official scents would be registered and tracked. What's clear here now is that she understood the power of olfactory control. The queen turns to a young apprentice working with a mortar and pestle. What's in that, she asks. He freezes. Civet, tamarind, clove. I was trying to imitate the morning blend. She smells it. Too much civet, she says. And you forgot the ash. She takes the pestle, adds a pinch of powdered charcoal from the edge of the fire pit, and grinds it herself. The scent transforms. Now it says absence. The boy bows low. You watch her move from scent to scent, correcting proportions, murmuring ingredients. This isn't just trade, it's training. By midday, she's gathered 4 new blends in small wax-sealed pots. She slips them into a satchel tied to her hip. These aren't for herself, they're instructions disguised in smell. One for the inland governor, pepper and mint make haste. One for the temple council, basil and figweight. One for the western port, clove and citrus peel, deny entry. And one she holds a moment longer, rose and ash. This one is for the palace. She dabs it behind her ear, a signal to return. As she turns back toward the winding forest path, the traders say nothing. But you smell it in the air, fear masked in sandalwood. They've been reminded who owns the wind. And just before the trees close around her, once more the queen lets a handful of frangipani petals fall from her palm. They hit the dirt softly. A receipt, the deal is done. By twilight, you're back beneath the first familiar trees that rim the palace compound. The scent of ash still clings faintly to the queen's sash, but it's mingled now with the heavier, fuller presence of cedar and cassia, a return scent. In court tradition, this blend is worn only when one comes home with an answer. And tonight she does. A servant greets her quietly at the gate, saying nothing but holding out a damp cloth perfumed faintly with basil and bergamot. The queen takes it, wipes her face and palms. You know what this is, the symbolic release of the road, a ritual to separate movement from decisions. But she keeps one vial tucked at her side, the rose and ash blend, a message still unsent. Inside the palace glows under hundreds of small oil lamps, and its air is thick with expectation. Advisors gather near the council chamber, but the queen bypasses them. She heads straight for the eastern salon, where a single nobleman waits pacing like a man trying to outwalk a prophecy. You remember him? The one she marked days ago with a truth blend frangipani, cinnamon, and civet. You smell it still on his sleeves. But there's something else now. Dried mint, subtle, hasty. He's tried to mask it. She doesn't sit. She walks slowly around him, inhaling, saying nothing. Each step is a question. He bows deeper with every silence. Finally, she stops. You altered your scent, she says. He stammers, denies, says he was simply trying to refresh after long hours in the sun. She doesn't argue. She reaches into her sash, pulls out a dark wooden spoon, a ceremonial tool used only during formal disinheritance rituals. The room stills. She doesn't use it. She places it in his hands. Hold it, she says, and stay still. A servant enters. He carries a dish filled with vetiver oil and floating in it 3 curled petals of hibiscus. It smells of judgment. The queen dips her fingertips into the oil, dabs a single drop onto each of the man's temples. Then she speaks, not loud, not angry. You are not cast out, but you are now watched. By this scent, not by me. The man bows so low his forehead touches the floor. The queen leaves without looking back. Outside in the cool hall, she walks slower now. You sense the weight of the day on her shoulders. But she doesn't head to her private chambers. She detours to the ancestral pavilion. This space is sacred. You feel it immediately. Everything is dim and perfumed in memory. Jars of old oils line the walls, sandalwood from her grandmother's reign, lemongrass used in coronation chants, myrrh distilled from a tree planted when the dynasty began. She selects one vial, old, chipped. The scent is cedar and regret. She uncaps it, dabs it onto a folded cloth, and presses it to the stone altar. This was the cost, she murmurs. Historians speculate endlessly about moments like this, times where Ranavalona seemed to confess, if only to the air. Some say she regretted nothing. Others say the perfume she wore during these vigils told a different story. Tonight it smells like forgiveness, reluctantly given. As she exits the pavilion, she stops at a low stone step where servants often rest unseen. There, curled asleep, is one of her youngest attendants. Face relaxed, hands still stained with oil. The queen smiles faintly, reaches into her robe. She removes a tiny sachet filled with orange peel, basil, and sleep flowers. She tucks it gently under the girl's fingers. You smell it as she walks away. A blend meant not for power, not for politics, but for dreaming. And for just a moment, the palace feels like a place where people might rest, even queens. The scent of the dreaming blend still clings faintly to your thoughts as morning breaks pale and quiet. But this day smells different. Not of policy, not of warning. Today smells like cedarwood and silk, like something preserved. The queen enters her study with something wrapped in bark cloth. It's old, fraying slightly at the corners. She places it on her writing desk and pauses. You move closer and the fragrance begins to rise. Rose, frankincense, honeyed ash. You've never smelled this before. Not quite. It's a blend with too much gravity to be worn casually. It's been tucked away for years, perhaps decades. As she unwraps the cloth, the object inside is revealed. A scented scarf folded carefully, still faintly pink from the crushed hibiscus used to dye it. She holds it in both hands, not delicately, but firmly. With recognition. This belonged to her, she says, to no one. And you know she means her mother. This scarf is not fashion, it is legacy. In the traditions of Highland royalty, the final perfume worn by a queen before her death is captured in fabric, sealed, hidden. It is not meant to be opened casually nor replicated. But here Ranavalona stands unwrapping it in full daylight. She lifts the fabric to her nose and closes her eyes. The blend is a constellation of intention, ravinsara, for healing, clove for strength, vanilla for clarity, and a single rare drop of calanona blossom, a flower that blooms only once every few years, used only in ceremonies of succession. You watch her breathe it in once, twice, and then she sits, not on a throne, but on a low mat, cross-legged, the scarf across her knees. She opens a small ivory case. Inside, fragments of letters, dried petals, bits of thread. Every item bears a trace of scent. She places them around her one at a time, reconstructing something more emotional than history. A scented lineage. She begins to speak not in decree, but in memory. She wore cinnamon the day the soldiers came, she says. She wore basil the night I failed her. She wore rainwater when she forgave me. You realize this is not just grief. This is translation. She is decoding a life through perfume. And as she speaks, she adds drops of matching oils to the scarf, as if refreshing the scent for the first time in decades. She's rebuilding a person. Historians will never find these records in scrolls or stone, but they are here, in molecules. You hear a noise, a soft cough at the doorway. A young girl enters, the same attendant from the night before, now wide-eyed and barefoot. She stops when she sees the scarf. The queen looks up. Come here. The girl approaches slowly. The queen folds the scarf in half, then quarters it. She lifts the corner that smells most strongly of calanona and clove, and presses it to the girl's wrist. There, she says, now she knows you. The girl doesn't speak, but her eyes fill. The queen places the scarf back into its bark wrapping, ties it tightly. This is yours now, she says, but you will never wear it. The girl nods. She knows. It's not a garment. It's a memory in waiting. After she leaves, the queen stands at her window. She rubs the last drop of frankincense between her palms and lets the wind take it. You smell it rising sweet and dry with a bitterness that feels like love when it's old. And for the first time in weeks, the queen doesn't reach for a new blend. She simply lets the old one fade. By the time the scarf is locked away once more, the queen has already changed her scent barely. Just a whisper of sandalwood and cinnamon leaf, the kind of blend you might wear when walking through a crowd that is yours, but may not always love you. She walks slowly this time with no advisors in tow down a corridor that feels colder than the rest of the palace. You sense it immediately, not from the walls or the floor, but from the air itself. Here the perfume is powdered. You enter the National Museum wing, if it could be called that. It's a space the queen does not visit often and certainly never brings guests to. The French helped build it, or rather, insisted on helping, and with it came glass cases, ivory placards, and a scentless foreign sterility that seems to repel memory. You step in behind her and smell displacement. Each artifact smells wrong. A vial of dried ylang-ylang sealed behind thick glass, once the ceremonial oil of a mountain queen, now labeled as regional fragrance undated. A sachet of clove and citrus peel labeled religious object, possibly used in temple rituals. But you know it. It was used to mark coming-of-age ceremonies in the Highlands. No temple required. Even the rosewood comb on display smells of civet and tamarind, a blend traditionally used by grieving wives. But the plaque reads, personal item assumed decorative. The queen says nothing, but her breathing changes. She walks from display to display, hands behind her back, absorbing each error with something like exhaustion. Historians still argue whether Ranavalona resisted the museum project or secretly curated it. But what they cannot debate is this: she never allowed her own scent to be placed behind glass. She stops at one display near the far end, inside a scarf. It looks like her mother's, but you can tell immediately it's not. The scent is wrong, faded, stripped, just faint linen and dust. The queen leans close. They washed it, she says softly, scrubbed it with foreign soap. She exhales through her nose, then does something you've never seen before. She opens her palm, presses it to the glass, and behind her, you catch a glimmer of movement, a servant standing quietly in the corner, holding something small. A sealed vial. He brings it forward. She uncaps it, and you're immediately surrounded by Neroli fig and bitter ash. A counterscent, not to erase, but to overpower. She dabs one drop, just one, at the base of the display glass. It will evaporate in hours, but for now it fills the room. She steps back. The original story has been rewritten, not in ink, in air. Later she walks out into the museum garden where a few foreign guests are being shown decorative perfume plants. They marvel at ginger flowers and mandravasa rotra, commenting on their exoticism. The queen moves past them. She kneels beside a low cluster of wild rabansar, rubs the leaves between her fingers, and says just loudly enough, "Not exotic, just home." One of the guests asks her something, likely a question about trade or harvest. She doesn't answer. Instead, she turns to a nearby tree where a ceremonial cloth is tied. It smells like memory and bruised leaves. She unknots it. Inside, a bundle of dried herbs and a scroll of names. The guest peeks, curious. She glances up. This, she says, is the part of history we don't preserve in museums. And then she lets the bundle fall back to the base of the tree. It will decompose. The scent will live longer than the paper, and the paper will last longer than the story ever would behind glass. You wake to the scent of parchment, not blank parchment, not the crisp, unused kind, but parchment that's been handled, folded, pressed, and most importantly, perfumed. You're in the Queen's archive room now. Not the main library, but a small chamber behind it. Few people come here. Fewer still are allowed to touch anything, except for one group, historians, or so they call themselves. Two men and a woman sit cross-legged on rush mats, ink-stained fingers hovering over an open scroll. A vial of clove oil stands nearby, uncorked. They're not here for the words, they're here for the sense. The queen is seated above them on a low platform, watching as they work. This scroll is dated wrong, the woman murmurs, inhaling deeply over the paper. The scent suggests high summer, but the date says early rains. The queen says nothing. Another man leans in. There's dried citrus here, possibly wild orange, but that wouldn't have bloomed until the third moon. So either the date is wrong, the queen finally says, or the writer was lying. They nod. This is olfactory forensics. Historians still argue whether scent was ever used to validate the past, but here now you see it in practice, memory verified by molecules. The queen gestures to a box in the corner. It's carved from rosewood, tied shut with raffia cord. The oldest records live there, not in words, but in layers of scent cloth pressed between slabs of bark and beeswax. You watch as one is lifted gently from the box. It smells like salt, copper, and pepper leaf. The man at her left breathes it in, eyes closing. This is a battle blend, he says, from the Valley campaign. The queen nods, worn by women who led the rear flank. The scroll that accompanied the cloth, long since faded, had once attributed that leadership to a visiting general. Now the scent tells the real story. Later, another cloth is brought out, faded yellow corners burnt. The queen hesitates, then opens it. You inhale. Lavender, tamarind, and dried milk. No one speaks at first. Finally, the youngest of the historians says, "This was from the orphan kitchens." The queen looks down. "Yes, there's lemon balm too," the woman adds quietly. "Used to calm fevers. This was survival, and for a moment no one breathes too deeply. This is not glamour. This is not diplomacy. This is the scent of loss." The queen carefully folds the cloth back and seals it. "These are not museum pieces," she says. "These are our traces." She gestures to the scrolls surrounding her. "Find the ones that lie," she adds, "the ones that smell wrong." The woman nods. "How will we know?" The queen smiles but doesn't answer. Instead, she rises, walks to the doorway, and opens a long, narrow cabinet inset in the wall. Inside, tiny scent sticks, each wrapped in red-dyed vine bark. Dozens of them labeled not with dates, but emotions. Joy, caution, betrayal, mercy, fury. These, she says, are the keys. The historians glance at one another. You will match scent to story, and when a scroll smells wrong, you will write it again. You step back and realize what she's doing. She's editing history not with red ink, but with the truth buried in scent residue. Hours later, as the sun slants gold across the floorboards, The queen sits alone at her work table, one final cloth laid before her. It smells like mint and unripe mango. Familiar. You've smelled it before. She holds it gently, presses it to her chest. This, she whispers, was the scent I wore the day I chose to rule. Not the day of her coronation, not her first decree, but the moment she decided. And now that scent is in the archive, folded quietly next to wars and markets and marriages. The story it tells, that power like perfume begins before anyone else notices. You drift from the archives into open air, the scent of pepper leaves still clinging faintly to your breath. Outside, the palace awakens with a different rhythm, less ritual, more rhythm. You hear drums, laughter, the low hum of trade caravans passing through the eastern gate. This is Plantation Day. Not a celebration, but a reckoning. You walk behind the queen as she travels east toward the ilang-ilang fields. The ground is cracked and dry underfoot, but the air is humid, sticky with sweet oils blooming from every tree. This is the engine of her kingdom, the perfume that paid for diplomacy, the fragrance that whispered through foreign ports long before her armies arrived. And it smells suspiciously perfect, too perfect. She pauses just before the gate to the largest plantation. A worker opens it with a bow, but she doesn't step through immediately. She sniffs. Jasmine. And too much of it. Jasmine isn't meant to dominate here. Not naturally. This means someone's been altering the scentscape. The queen enters anyway. Rows of low trees stretch into the horizon, each strung with vines and small white blossoms. Workers, most of them women, move between the trees and practice silence baskets swinging from their hips. The queen walks directly into the middle of the field. She kneels, presses her palm into the dirt, then inhales. Ash, sugarcane residue, chemical musk. They're faking the purity. She stands. Where is the master grower, she asks. A man is brought forward, middle-aged eyes, tired hands stained. You burn near the roots, she says, voice low. For insects, he offers. And the musk. He hesitates. We needed volume for export. Historians still argue whether Ranavalona understood international trade policy or simply ruled with instinct. But here now you see that instinct burn. You poisoned our scent, she says. The man tries to speak, but she raises a hand. Do you know what this place once was? He shakes his head. She walks past him toward a small circle of trees near the boundary. This grove, she says, was planted by my great-grandmother. No fertilizer, no musk. The scent here could make a man fall in love or surrender without ever speaking. She plucks a blossom, crushes it between her fingers. The air fills with honest ilang-ilang. Spicy, floral, unmistakable. Smell this, she tells him. He does. Now smell what you've made. He does. He pales. Later that day, the queen orders a halt on all exports from the plantation. Workers are dismissed, not punished, but given cleansing sachets to take home Ravinsara eucalyptus and a whisper of sweet basil. She's not punishing the laborers. She's cleansing the land. You follow her to the hill overlooking the fields. There she unrolls a mat, sits cross-legged, and begins mixing oils. She's not making perfume, she's making antidote. One bottle clove mint and unfiltered coconut oil used to reopen soil memory. Another charcoal and dried pomegranate flower for drawing out synthetic base notes. She gives these to a servant and says, in the roots, every fifth tree, it will take time. But scent is patient. At sunset, she visits the old storage barn where barrels of oil await shipment. She uncorks one, sniffs. Send this back to the earth, she says. No shouting, no fury. Just a quiet unmaking of what never should have been. You follow her one last time that day to the edge of the plantation where a single woman waits by the fence, her shawl wrapped in pepper leaf and sweat. She hands the queen a package, a linen bundle soaked in real ilang-ilang, tagged with a palm thread. This is from the inland hills, the woman says. The queen opens it, smiles. They remember, she whispers. She dabs a drop on her wrist, and for the first time all day, the wind shifts toward her. The queen returns from the plantation as twilight washes the hills in smoke, gray, and copper. But she doesn't return in silence. Her scent precedes her ilang-ilang and pepper leaf, layered, intentionally worn like a crown. The perfume is truthful, potent, and unmistakably her. Tonight, she will not rule from a throne. She will rule from a balcony. You climb the winding stair behind her to the upper terrace overlooking the palace square. A crowd gathers below, ministers, midwives, merchant spies, pretending not to be spies. They've come not because they were summoned, but because they've heard something changed in the air. And it has. The queen walks to the edge of the balcony, flanked by no guards wearing no jewels, holding no staff. Just a vial. She uncaps it slowly. The scent drifts down like a story. Cardamom, vetiver, burnt cinnamon leaf. The same scent worn by her grandmother on the day she refused colonial negotiation. Historians still argue whether it was a political stand or an act of pride, but everyone in the square knows what it means now, defiance. She doesn't speak yet. She lets the perfume settle, then lifts a second vial. Smaller, deeper green. This one smells of honey and ash. She lets a drop fall into her palm, holds her hand out over the railing. This, she says, is for the ones who forgot what we smelled like before they arrived. Her voice is calm, but the scent does the shouting. She pours the rest of the vial into the air. The breeze catches it. An entire empire inhales. Later that evening, she walks to her private scent chamber, small, warm, lined with hundreds of glass bottles. But she doesn't reach for her usual blends. Instead, she chooses one labeled with a date, not a name. 5 years ago. She uncaps it. Orange blossom, bitter cola, salt, the scent of mourning worn not for death but for betrayal. You remember this one. It was last used the night her trade minister was caught selling scent formulas to foreign traders. She wears it again now, not because she grieves, but because she wants the palace to remember. She walks the halls with it. Servants tense, ministers fall silent. Not because she speaks, but because her perfume reminds them. As she enters the northern corridor, you hear her footsteps slow. She's approaching the entrance to the foreign wing, the suites built to accommodate guests from Europe. She stops outside one door, uncorks a vial, frankincense, clove, and sulfur. Not a perfume, but a signal. She dabs it on the doorknob. Just one drop, enough that when the doors open, the scent will rise, not to choke, but to warn. Historians call this kind of tactic superstition. But in a palace where everyone reads scent like scripture, the message is clear. You are not invisible, and you are not safe. You follow her back to the garden where the night is heavy with wet leaves and sleeping jasmine. She sits on a woven mat beneath the moonlight, legs, crossed fingers dipped in a shallow bowl of rose and pine ash. A servant brings news. A new perfumer has arrived from the southern mountains. Young, unproven, but with a nose said to match the queen's. She nods. Send them to the blending room. You follow as the servant leads the new perfumer into the palace's inner lab, stone shelves, dried roots, slow-burning incense. The queen enters last. The room stills. She places 6 vials in a row. Match these, she says. The young perfumer nods. One by one, they sniff, measure, blend. Each recreation is good, but not perfect. The queen watches, then asks, "What did you forget?" The perfumer pauses, sniffs again, then nods and adds the missing note, charred banana peel. A touch of bitterness. Now the blend is right. The queen smiles. You may stay. Outside, the wind stirs, and the kingdom tonight smells like history reasserting itself. The morning arrives slowly, with golden light slipping like honey down the palace walls. You wake to a scent that's both familiar and new, basil and memory. The queen is in motion again, this time through a quieter wing of the palace, her feet moving with a deliberate calm you've come to recognize, not rest, but strategy. Today the scent is different because the setting is different. You followed her into a room with polished wooden panels and walls hung with scrolls, not royal edicts, but letters. This is the embassy hall, and the queen is preparing for what the French call diplomacy, but what she knows to be scent warfare. Across from her, 2 envoys, young, powdered, draped in crisp linen that smells faintly of Paris soap, cold ores, iron, and false roses. They come bearing documents, but it's their scent that tells her more than ink ever could. The queen wears narrowly ylang-ylang and pepperroot. It's a blend used to convey confidence without commitment. She smiles. They begin to speak using a translator who shifts uncomfortably between Malagasy and French, but the queen is not listening to the words. She's listening to the undertones, the shifting weight of perfumes worn badly. One envoy leans forward and she catches it, powdered musk and bergamot, a blend reserved for seduction, not statecraft, a misstep. The queen doesn't flinch. She reaches for her fan, one laced with frankincense and vanilla ash, and waves it once. The scent curls forward like a sly remark. The translator stumbles on the next phrase. This is modern scent diplomacy, no longer done through war or whispers, but through olfactory tension. Your perfume says, "We know your ships arrived early." Hers replies, "And we let you dock anyway." The second envoy produces a gift box, 3 vials of perfume from grass. The queen opens one, sniffs, Too sweet, too French. She places it aside, then lifts a vial from her own sash. It's smaller, darker. She removes the stopper and lets the scent drift across the room. Civet, rosewood, charcoal. The envoys blink. One coughs. "You're wearing morning scent," the younger one blurts. The queen smiles. "No," she replies. "I'm wearing remembrance." And just like that, the balance tips. Historians still debate the role of scent in post-colonial diplomacy, but here it is a language louder than any treaty. The queen rises, motions to a side door. "Walk with me." She leads the envoys into a corridor lined with dried herbs and ceremonial cloths. This is the Hall of Histories, where foreign noses are introduced to truths they cannot translate. She gestures to a bowl of dried ginger, eucalyptus, and tamarind. "This is what we burned when your ships came the first time." Then to a wall hanging infused with clove vetiver and crushed sugarcane. "This is what we wore when we sent you home." The envoys are quiet now. The queen turns. "You came to talk," she says softly. "But we came to remember." Later she walks alone in the garden, her scent now changed, bergamot and lemongrass. Sharp alert, a signal to her staff, "I am open but not unguarded." A courtier approaches with news a neighboring island has sent a scented scroll-dried basil and crushed sea fennel bound in wax. She opens it, smells first, reads later. It's a proposal for shared harvesting rights. She nods, then turns to her blending table and adds 1 drop of cinnamon oil to a fresh parchment. A message back, yes, but carefully. The scroll is sealed not with wax, but with smell. In this world, you do not need to be fluent in every language. You just need to carry the right perfume. The wind is different today. It carries more than scent, it carries sentiment. As you follow the queen through the southern corridor of the palace, the air is thick with ilang ilang and bitter cola, an unusual pairing that suggests the start of something personal. She's heading to the central courtyard, where banners have been hung not for a royal event, but for something far more radical. Today she will speak not as ruler, but as symbol. And her perfume has changed to match clove pine resin and wild ginger, the traditional scent of call and claim. As she steps into the square, she's flanked not by ministers, but by storytellers, elders, and weavers. Each carries a pouch or satchel filled not with words, but powders and petals tucked into cloth with knots so intricate they read like poetry. This is the movement called olfactory nationalism. Not a rebellion, not quite a religion, but something just as potent. It began quietly years ago when young scholars and old midwives alike began recording scent blends used in villages for weddings, funerals, crop blessings, birthings. They realized the story of a people was not just in history books, it was in air. The queen was the first to bless the idea. Now she is the one to carry it forward. She walks to a low dais, no throne, no microphone, just a bowl of burning tamarind bark at her feet. The crowd quiets. She does not speak right away. She holds up a single sachet tied in red cord. She opens it. You smell it instantly. Ash, dried orchid, salt, the blend worn by soldiers on their final march. This, she says, was almost forgotten. She opens another. Banana flower, sugarcane, hibiscus. This was worn by girls when they first bled. One more Ravinsar clove, dried mango skin, used to name a newborn. Then she pauses and opens a final sachet. No scent, just air. This, she says, is what remains when we forget who we are. She does not weep, but the women behind her do. She walks into the crowd, handing sachets to strangers one by one. Some contain perfume, some contain memory, some warning. No two are alike. The wind begins to shift. The scent of identity fills the square. Not one smell, but many. The kind you can't bottle, the kind you can't sell. You watch as a merchant dabs his neck with vanilla and citrus peel, once outlawed during occupation. A child clutches a strip of cloth that smells like basil in Raina's grandmother's home. A singer kneels to rub cassia bark and rice flour into her hands before raising her voice. This is not pageantry. This is reclamation. Historians will argue about this day, some calling it symbolic, others performative. But they won't smell what you're smelling, and they won't feel what you're feeling. Later, as the courtyard clears, the queen walks back alone, no perfume trailing behind her now. She returns to her chamber, closes the door, and opens a small wooden box that has waited too long. Inside, a blank sachet, untied, unscented. She pulls it out and begins to fill it slowly, deliberately. 1 pinch of dried lemongrass, 2 shavings of burnt sandalwood, a single flake of ash from the fire in the square. She ties it shut, then whispers, "This is the scent of a country remembering itself." She tucks it into her robe and steps back into the wind. The palace sleeps lightly tonight like an old cat in the corner resting, but one ear still flicking. You follow the queen through the western wing where the air feels denser, almost pulsing with some quiet preparation. She is not in royal robes now, nor surrounded by pages or guards. Just a shawl scented faintly with myrrh and sweet basil, a combination reserved for ritual. She slips into a long, narrow room. No torches, only moonlight filtering through carved wooden slats. The air inside is thick with incense, already burning rosewood and cinnamon bark, the smell of invocation. At the far end of the room sits a woman draped in layers of moss green cloth. Her face is shadowed, but you can smell clove oil and old lavender clinging to her skin like memory. This is a healer, but not of the body. She is one of the last olfactory mediums, a spiritual conduit between the living and the past, working not through chance or possession, but through perfume. The queen sits opposite her, cross-legged. Neither speaks. The healer reaches into a woven pouch and draws out 3 glass beads, each sealed with wax and packed with dried petals. She breaks the first bead. The scent floods the air, turmeric, dried bloodroot, and salt. The queen inhales, eyes closed. "You carry someone else's anger," the healer says. Ranavalona does not deny it. The second bead, Ravinsara in burnt orange peel. A sharpness enters the room. "This is grief, but not yours." The queen's mouth tightens just slightly. Then comes the third. She cracks it open and tips the contents into a clay dish. The scent is impossible to place. It's faintly floral but metallic, dry yet spiced. Calanona blossom, crushed parchment, a trace of iron. The healer's voice softens. "This is your mother's voice, still waiting for you to answer." Historians never write of these sessions. They dismiss them as folklore, dream work, queenly indulgence. But in this room, you feel a connection, not through history, but through smell. The healer reaches for a 4th bead, but the queen lifts a hand. "No," she says. "Now I listen." She opens a vial from her own sash, the rose and ash blend. The one she made after returning from the rebel traders. The one she's carried without wearing. Until now. She places a single drop on the ground between them. The healer nods. "You brought the truth," she says, "but it needs to be whispered." She hands the queen a bundle of river reeds tied with string. "Burn this under your bed," she says. "It will bring her." The queen rises slowly. Before she leaves, she presses her palm to the healer's shoulder, then dabs a bit of oil from her fingers onto the woman's forehead, pepper leaf and vetiver. A blessing. Not from queen to subject, but from one scent bearer to another. Later that night, the queen stands on her private balcony. Below, the courtyard is silent, but not still. Breeze moves gently through the trees, brushing night blooms open. You can smell moonflower and regret in the air. She lights the river reeds. The smoke rises sweet, then bitter, almost like old paper catching flame. She sits beside the smoke, doesn't speak, just breathes. Somewhere deep in the palace, a wind chime tinkles, though there is no wind. You sense it before you see it, a change in the air. The queen closes her eyes and says softly, "I'm ready to remember you." The smoke curls upward like a question finally heard, and for the first time in many nights, she sleeps without scent. You wake into silence, not emptiness, but reverence. The kind of silence usually found in temples or forests just before the rain. The queen is already awake, of course. You find her at the far end of the palace, standing barefoot on the stone walkway where the wind funnels in from the hills. Her hair is unbound. Her robe is simple, and for once she smells like nothing at all. No ilang-ilang, no cardamom, no memory, just air. She holds a bottle in her hand, clear glass, unlabeled, unopened. You know this isn't just a new blend, it's a new moment. She opens it. The scent escapes softly fresh rain bark, torn basil leaves. Not perfume, place. She lifts it to her wrist, then stops. This, she says to herself, was the scent of the land before the First War. No one responds, not even the trees. But the memory lands anyway. She dabs a single drop at her pulse point, then inhales slow and steady, as if reintroducing herself to something long gone. And perhaps she is. Today, she is not meeting advisors or envoys. She is walking the villages, not as a monarch, but as a witness. She travels with only a small satchel of oils, most of them gifts meant to be given, not worn. The people she visits carry their own blends, strong, local, unpolished. You smell them all as you pass, A mother with charred rice stalk and lemongrass tucked behind her ear, used for courage when sending sons to distant farms. An elder whose shawl reeks of smoked cassava leaf and bitter cola, a scent he's worn since his brother died in the last cyclone. A child trailing sugarcane and mango bark, bright and sticky. The queen stops in each home, not to speak but to listen, to inhale. She asks no questions. Instead, she requests permission to touch the oil jars each family keeps, often wrapped in cloth, hidden in corners, protected like sacred scripture. One woman unwraps a tiny bottle sealed with wax, the scent ashes and mint. The queen nods. "A daughter," she says. "Yes," the woman replies, "gone 4 winters ago." The queen touches her wrist, then adds a drop of Ravinsar from her own satchel. "For remembrance," she whispers. Another home, another scent, pandan lime and something sour. It takes you a moment, then you realize sorrow turned inward. "This is the scent of not saying goodbye," the queen says. The man bows his head. You realize the queen is not just rediscovering her people. She is weaving a new map, not with borders or banners, with perfume. Each home becomes a point, each scent a line. Later in the day, she stands at the edge of a high field overlooking the hills, where a small child runs past with flowers clutched in one fist and a pouch of herbs in the other. She stops him gently. "What are you carrying?" He opens his hand. It smells like jasmine and dirt. "Treasure," he says. She smiles. "You're right." As the sun dips low and the light turns to copper, the queen removes her shawl. She places it on a stone, then pours the last of the Land Before War blend onto the fabric. She leaves it there in the wind. "It belongs here now," she says. As she turns to go, the air carries the scent back toward her, not as property, but as blessing. You walk behind her, and for the first time since you began following her, you realize she is no longer walking ahead of the people. She is walking with them. The day ends slowly, like incense fading from a long-burned stick. You're back at the palace now, walking the quiet inner halls that once pulsed with tension, ceremony, suspicion. Tonight they hum with something softer. The queen has returned barefoot, no attendants, no speech, just her, and her scent jasmine and old sandalwood. Simple, familiar, not royal, just hers. She enters the courtyard under a moon glowing like a polished pearl. The garden rustles around her frangipani, nodding in sleep, lemongrass curling into itself. The air is heavy with the scents she's worn, gifted, planted, buried. They surround her like history, invisible, undeniable. She walks slowly to the center, where a stone basin waits, filled with water and floating petals. You recognize the ritual. It's called Sari Pafona, the veiling of scent, once used only for final rites. But tonight it's used for something else, letting go. She dips her fingers into the basin, pulling out a single petal soaked in basil and bloodroot, the scent of responsibility. She lifts it to her lips, exhales, then releases it. The next petal, Ravinsara and clove, the scent of vigilance, released. Lime and vetiver, memory. Pepperleaf and ash, strength. Kalanona blossom, legacy. Each scent she lets go one by one. The water carries them away in slow, concentric ripples. Historians will never smell this moment. They will write of her reign in dates and treaties and battles narrowly avoided. But they won't know that the true end of her rule happened here. In scent, the queen removes her sash, not as abdication, but as release. She folds it neatly and places it beside the basin. Then she stands, walks to the edge of the courtyard, and breathes in deeply air that smells only of the present. Not history, not legacy, just air. She turns once, looks to the stars, and says softly, "I am finished being remembered. I want to simply be." And in that moment, the wind rises, not loud, not sharp, just steady. It carries the last tendrils of sandalwood away. And you understand power never leaves in thunder. It leaves when no one needs to name it anymore. She walks through the garden, and no flowers bend in fear, only in recognition. And now, as the moon drifts higher above the quiet palace, the scents fade one by one like candle smoke, curling into the rafters. The garden still breathes soft and slow. So do you. You settle deeper into stillness, wrapped in the hush of the night. The queen's footsteps are long gone now, absorbed by stone and earth. Her perfumes, once sharp with command or tender with memory, now linger only faintly in the folds of cloth and doorways in the hollow of your thoughts. Each scent was a sentence, each blend a paragraph. And tonight you've read the entire book, not with your eyes but with your breath. You don't need to remember the names. Not every queen, not every leaf. Just the feeling that power can be quiet, that identity can rise without shouting, and that memory, real memory, sometimes wears perfume instead of armor. Let the stories slide back now like silk against skin. Let your breath match the breeze outside, gentle, rhythmic, and unhurried. The hills of Madagascar are asleep. The night has no more questions, and your body too has no more to carry. Sink into your pillow. Let your shoulders drop. The air is still soft and empty of worry. You have wandered far. You are safe now. Close your eyes. Nothing remains but peace and the faintest trace of wild ginger on the wind. Sweet dreams.